This visa would allow you to bring your parents or your grandparents to New Zealand and is valid for 3 years. What are the requirements? How much does it cost? What are the documents that you're going to submit? What are the things that you should know? What are the conditions? Everything is going to be in this video, so keep watching. Let's find out all you need to know about this visa. Kiara Fano is your girl, the sassy engineer. Today I want to talk about the parents and grandparents visitor visa. This visa would allow you to bring your parents or your grandparents to New Zealand and is valid for 3 years. Parents and grandparents visitor visa allows you to come to New Zealand to visit your child or your grandchild, or in the reverse, allows you to bring your parents or your grandparents to New Zealand. But you have to be a citizen or resident for your parents or grandparents to qualify, and you must agree to sponsor them for them to also qualify. But this visa allows them to travel in and out of New Zealand to visit you. With this visa, you can stay up to 6 months at a time. So the maximum total stay is 18 months. However, when they approve this visa, they're going to give you 3 years. Something to note is that if your passport expires before the 3 years, they're going to give you up to your passport expiration. But when you now renew your passport, you can now submit it back to get the remaining dates. And I've talked about how you can get your remaining time on your visa in my channel, so check out that video. Now the cost of this visa is from $211. It doesn't mean that it's $211, note that. So from $211. Processing time, they said 80% have processed within 4 months. Mine took slightly over 3 months. I'm going to be talking about this visa from my own experience, and then things that did not apply to me but are also on the criteria list. I'm going to mention them as well. So it's going to be very personalized, okay? But note that the fact that it's personalized does not mean it's not what is on there. It just goes to show that sometimes things vary depending on where you're from. With this visa, you can visit your children or grandchildren in New Zealand. So the parents or the grandparents, because it's called parents and grandparents visa, they are going to be talking about it in their own perspective. So you're not going to expect to see with this visa you can visit your parents or grandparents. No, because they are the ones coming to New Zealand. So it's going to be from their own perspective. So I'm going to talk about it like that. Okay, with this visa, you can also travel in and out of New Zealand multiple times. You can include your partner in your visa application. But the thing to note is that if you want to bring a dependent child or children with you, they will need to apply for their own visas, because this visa does not cover dependent children. I mean, they expect that by now you shouldn't be having any dependent child, you know. Anyway, it doesn't mean that that's the case, because people's situation varies. You can only apply for this visa while you're outside of New Zealand. So this is very important to note, that you must be outside of New Zealand before you apply for this visa. It doesn't mean that you must be in your home country. Let's say you are from India, you can be in China or in Dubai or in Australia when you're applying for this visa, but you should not be in New Zealand when you're applying for this visa. If you're only planning to visit New Zealand once, they recommend that the general visitor visa would suit you, which makes sense, especially if you want the visa immediately, because this visa will take more than 1 month. So note that they said here 80% are processed within 4 months. Like I said, I've used the criteria myself. You don't have to be in your home country when you apply. Remember that I've said it and I'm saying it again, but you must not be in New Zealand when you apply. And you can apply for this visa online or on paper. You know me, I always recommend that you apply online, except you have the home office or VFS visa application center in your country and it's close by, then that's okay, you can apply on paper. But if you're like me, who is from Nigeria, and there is no visa application center or embassy, New Zealand, anything in Nigeria, you have to send everything to South Africa. It is better to apply online. This is where I pause and ask that if you have not yet joined the community, click the subscribe button to join the community, and make sure to like my video, share it to those you think is going to be helpful for. Let's continue. What you will need to apply. So all the supporting documents you will need, obviously the standard stuff, identity documents, health, you must be in good health. With this parents and grandparents visitor visa, you may be asked to have a chest x-ray or medical examination or both as proof of your good health. They always do this, especially if your parent or grandparent is over 60 years old. There's a high chance that they'll ask them. But wait till they ask. Don't rush and go and do the medical. Don't be like me. So in my case, I rushed and went to do the medical, and they still asked me again. So I had to like write them and tell them I've done it again. This is the number, go and check. Okay, so wait, I didn't want to delay it, but I found out that I should have waited. So what I advise you is to do is, when you don't do the medical before they ask you, wait for them to ask you, because they may not even ask you in the long run. So that one is there. Character, you must be of good character. I did not have, my parents did not have to do a police report or anything, but there is a chance that you may be asked. Again, wait for them to ask you. Genuine intention, you must genuinely intend to meet the conditions of your visa. This is where the socioeconomic ties comes in, because this visa is for your parents and grandparents to come and visit you and go back. It's not to live permanently. So this is where you have to prove that they have strong socioeconomic ties, something that ties them back to their home country. It could be in the form of a job, property, land, grandchildren, your remaining siblings are back home. You know, something that will show that they have something at home. Because you may be thinking, why would they think my parents will come here and run? Yeah. Default mode is for them to think that they are going to come here and disappear for whatever reason. So prove that. You must intend to visit your children and grandchildren in New Zealand. Your children or grandchildren must intend to be in New Zealand when you visit. This is also very important. Whatever time or date you are fixing in that your application, you, the child or the grandchild, must be in New Zealand. Because you are a sponsor, and the condition for sponsorship is that you must be in the country when the person you are sponsoring is in the country. You can't travel out while the person is there. It's going to affect that person. Something to note: if you already have travel plans or book things, put it after or before, because you have to be in the country when your parents or grandparents is coming here. Sponsorship is mandatory. It says here you must be sponsored by your child or grandchild or their parents. This their parents looks like a case where maybe your child got married to another person and had a child with that person. So you have the grandchild who is the child of your own child. So your child's partner, your child's partner can sponsor you. Your child can sponsor you, or your grandchild can sponsor you. You get what I mean? So that their parents means that your child's partner, your child's husband, your child's wife can sponsor you. It doesn't have to be your child. Okay, and then these people have to meet sponsorship criteria, which on a minimum is that they have to be New Zealand citizen or resident. Your sponsor's immigration status, here your sponsor must be a New Zealand citizen or resident. They have to be your child or your grandchild or their parents. So that means is that you have to be a New Zealand citizen or resident. You have to be the child. You have to be the grandchild or the partner of the child or the parents. You have to be 18 or over. You must meet the requirements for acceptable sponsor that I've talked about, and you must not be sponsoring anyone else. So if you are on a student visa or you are on a work visa, you do not qualify to sponsor anyone for this visa. Now, this visa requires sponsorship, which invariably means that your parents or grandparents does not qualify for this visa. You must show evidence of the relationship to your sponsor. So it can be in the form of birth certificate, birth records, but you must give evidence of family relationship to your sponsor. Your sponsor must be your child, your grandchild, or the parent of your child or grandchild. So the parent of your child or grandchild looks like a case of adoption, because this is your child, but that is your child's parent. So it's most likely an adoption case where you gave birth for whatever reason, your child was given out on adoption. So the parents of that child, the adopted parents of that child, can bring you to New Zealand using the parent or grandparents visa, visitor visa. Same thing if your child was given up on adoption and that your child has a child, you know, something like that. So that's why it says here, you must provide evidence of your family relationship to your sponsor. If your sponsor is the parent of your child, but not your child, you must provide evidence of the sponsor's relationship to your child or grandchild. They also say here that you can provide household registration documents if this confirms your relationship to your sponsor. So whatever document confirms relationship to your sponsor, add it on. So in my case, I used birth certificate. I also added photos, childhood photos, photos of now, every photo that showed and gave proof that my mother is my mother. I found it ridiculous too, so don't worry. You know, something to prove, especially because I'm from Nigeria. We are Nigerians, and you know how the rest of the world looks at us, even though that is a mistaken identity in most cases. But anyway, it is what it is. Healthcare, this one is just ticking a box that you agree to pay your own healthcare cost, and if you are unable to pay for your healthcare, your sponsor will be responsible for the cost. So that means if you come to New Zealand and something happens and you cannot pay for your healthcare in the hospital, because it's going to be very expensive, your sponsor would be the one to pay for that. That's why they always recommend that you have full insurance in case any base happens, but God will not allow anything to happen. Now, you can also bring your partner to New Zealand, but your partner must meet the requirements for this visa. And to bring your partner, you must provide evidence of your relationship with your partner, so marriage certificates and all those other things. That your partner must meet identity, character, and health requirements for this visa. So the standard norm. You can bring, let's say you are inviting your mom, you can bring your dad, or your parents got whatever happened, they got married to someone else that is not your father or is not your mother, but they want to come with them. You can include them in their visa application, but you cannot include dependent children in your visa application. They will need to apply for their own visa. So it could be a general visitor visa or any other visa they qualify for. Other extra documents that you can add, honestly, especially to prove genuine intention, because what really gets people is proving your genuine intention. Proving relationship to your sponsor is very easy because this is your child or your grandchild or the parents of your child or your grandchild. So those documents are always there. You know, all those things are easy. What really gets people is evidence of genuine intention. What we did was we added work documents. If you are employed, employment letter from your employer, pay slips, leave letter. But if you are not employed, you are self-employed, you need your certificate of registration. That's document to show that your business is legit. Basically all your business documents. If you have your shareholder report, put that as well to show how much share you have in the company. You can put how much you're earning, sort of income generation from the company. So some people use shareholder registration, some people use income generation. I would recommend that you also add a bank account if your parents or grandparents has an account that has enough money to also add it. Then funds is, since you're the one sponsoring, you're going to be the one taking care of them. Sponsor needs to be an eligible sponsor, so you have to be a citizen or resident visa. That your resident visa should not have section 49(1) conditions, otherwise they're not going to agree. And what I found out is that if you just got residency, I will advise that you wait for a bit or even 3 months before you apply for your parents or grandparents visitor visa. Some people are lucky, but some people get rejected. So I will advise you wait, but if you don't want to wait, then you have to add so many documents that will prove that your parents or your grandparents will be here genuinely, otherwise they will suspect that it's going to come and default. Now, some refugees can also become sponsors, but they can only sponsor their family member. And you have to also not be bankrupt, should not be liable for deportation. I mean, you as a sponsor, you need to be earning enough money. You need to be able to, have a house to, somewhere that you stay. You don't need to own a house, but rented apartment, somewhere to host your parents or grandparents, because when they come to New Zealand, they're under your care, so you need to be able to take care of them. So you need to meet the sponsorship criteria as well. Once the parents and grandparents visitor visa application is submitted, you are going to receive an email from immigration asking you to fill out the sponsorship form. You are going to fall under natural person because you're an individual, and then you need to provide evidence of funds that you have enough money to sponsor this person. Basically, for visitor visa, you need to have at least $1,000 per month. If you have a prepaid accommodation, $400. So for you as a sponsor, add your bank statements, your pay slip, proof of accommodation. If you have, you should have accommodation. So proof of accommodation and everything about your employment. Extra supporting documents that are not clearly stated but to go a long way to help your visa. It's always cover letter. People always miss this thing, and I say this because New Zealand application, you're doing it online, you're not going to see an immigration officer, so they can only get a feel about you as a person through your documents. In as much as you submit all your documents and extra, still add a cover letter explaining everything. What cover letter also helps is that if there are certain lapses that even you, when you sit down and look at your application, you question one point, it will help you to explain those points in that letter, and it gives the immigration officer a clearer view, bigger picture of who you are as a person. Otherwise, most often, if your document is not complete, they will not get back to you and ask you to supply that document. They will reject it. The only document that they will get back to you and ask that I have seen is medical, or if they need you to do police certificate. Well, 50-50%. Depending on the immigration officer that is handling your case. Some people will get back to you and be like, we need these extra documents. Because I've had a friend that did a visitor visa, or a friend's friend that applied for a visitor visa, and the immigration officer got back to them asking for extra documents. But it's not going to be in all cases. That letter of explanation is always very helpful. So for the conditions of this visa, you must be sponsored by your child or grandchild or their New Zealand parents. You cannot work while in New Zealand. You can visit New Zealand multiple times until your visa expires. As long as each time you visit, you stay for 6 months or less, your total stay in New Zealand is not more than 18 months. There are some cases that your passport will expire before the 3 years that you're supposed to be given. In those cases, they're going to give you up to your passport expiration, usually 1 month before your passport expires. But once you renew your passport, you can now submit your passport again to get the remaining time. It's not compulsory. You can choose to submit again to get the remaining time, because sometimes the remaining time can be 1.5 years. Depending on when you applied, So that's just something to know. Don't worry if your passport is going to be expiring soon. But that soon does not mean 6 months. So it has to be more than 6 months. Because if your passport is expiring 6 months, then why are you submitting a visa application? It even says here too, your passport must be valid for at least 3 months after you plan to leave New Zealand. Remember, you cannot stay more than 6 months per year. So let's assume that you're going to stay 6 months in the first year. That means that your passport must be valid at least 3 months after you plan to leave New Zealand, which means that your passport should not expire within 9 months from when you plan to arrive in New Zealand. Otherwise, problem. That's all about parents and grandparents visitor visa. I hope you found this video helpful. I've shared most things that I did from my own experience. All the requirements that were there were what I made up plus extra.